Next, on this episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
And it's really easy when you're thinking about creating that signature process, a signature solution, to say, well, you meet with people, you ask them a bunch of questions, you look at their financial statements, you create a plan for them based on that, and then you monitor that plan. I mean, that's like financial advisor mantra, but it's also probably it's very similar in coaching business owners. But how you approach that, the language that you use structures that. So as we're creating these signature solutions, which represent that unique value, we want to pull out the way that you actually talk about that in the world. What are the words that you use that are different than the way that somebody else might do it? Because that's part of what that uniqueness is.
This podcast has never been listened to. Do you see the old tagger on it? That's right. Brand new, never been listened to. What? No, you can't listen. No one has ever heard it. Don't look anymore. You've looked at it long enough. Who am I kidding? No one would want to listen to the Nice Guys on Business anyway. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by TurnKey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
Okay, Nice Guy community, what would your life be like if you were truly able to swing for the fences? Now, in business, in your relationships with big projects, and with each of your most important goals. Now, talking to us today about that and about living intentionally with less stress and uncertainty and less time invested in stuff you have no control over, and with a game plan. Rob Brown has been doing this and beyond for his clients for decades. Excited to talk to him. Rob Brown, welcome to the Nice Guys.
Nice to be here, Doug.
It's nice to be here. You know, nobody's responded to my intro with "nice to be here," but it certainly is a good play on words there. So in the introduction that I put together, it's a tall order to fill, or at least it sounds like a tall order to fill. Swinging for the fences, both personally and professionally, but not just teaching it, but rather living it too. Have you lived your life that way, Rob?
Not all the time, in full disclosure, as you might imagine, but I try to, because I really think that in life and in business, consistently trying to get better, be better, is a really important thing to do. And it's important to stretch and not to hold ourselves back. So I really feel like as I try new things, as I've been involved in different businesses and different aspects of business, I just want to be my best at what I do. And I know my best can always get better, although that's probably not the proper use of English.
No, that was totally fine. We will make sure that we don't even X that out in the show notes. We'll keep that. Maybe we'll even use that quote. We're just coming off, and we're 2024 in August of 2024 as of the recording of this, and we're on the tail end of the Olympics. They just had ended, and one of the things that, even though I'm not a common follower of the Olympics, I do know about the discipline it takes to be at the top of your game, enough to be an Olympian. How much discipline is required in order to hit some of those goals? I would imagine that it's hard to live your fullest life if you're not disciplined with some pretty structured habits, and sometimes habits equate to major control, and sometimes that then even gets into some anxiety and pressure and stress. But you seem to be able to have accomplished this and train and teach people and consult people, coach people in the less stress version of doing all of those things. So how do they play together nicely?
Yeah. So I believe that we all have routines or success habits that we can engage in on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis that don't have to be high stress. It's just that power that comes from repeating things that make you better over and over again lets that happen. It's when we think that we have to make to make a change, we have to take some big leap, and we just want to jump out into the open, when we can really just take small, consistent steps forward and allow that to build up. I think that's really what's most important. And that's what happens with, great athletes. I'm not an athlete, but I am a fan of athletes. And as I watch them train or read about how they train and get ready to be at the top of their game, they don't go from, being able to bench press 250 pounds today to bench pressing 500 pounds tomorrow.
Right.
They're going up, step by step, place by place, but they're doing it every day or whatever that routine is to build their way up to that. And I think that's what we have to do when we're living or working intentionally.
I think about the steps and the path and the journey that Strickland and I have been on from the moment that we created the Nice Guys on Business as a promotional resource to a book that I had written back in 2013 into 2014, and then creating the podcast and not really knowing, like, where are we going? Well, we weren't really sure where we were going, but we were making great time. It's like the way we thought about it. And then once we finally struck on the path of podcast and podcast production, what we realized was that it wasn't an overnight success, and we weren't trying to be an overnight success. And we joke about this all the way through our entire tenure as podcast producers and owning a production company, is that slow and steady wins the race. Now, I've always been a slow and steady wins the race kind of guy, and I have really applied to the school of incremental changes, just like you had just said. Why is it that some people look at it and they're just measuring your middle to their beginning, and they're frustrated and don't move beyond that? How do you get people to focus on just take those incremental steps in the very beginning to try to be more disciplined or more intentional about what you're doing? How do you do that?
So I think it's by beginning with some end in mind. So in our process, as we're coaching and working with our clients, one of the first things we want them to do is dream big. We want them to think about, what would be business look like in 10 years? What are really crazy things that you would like to accomplish? And write them down. Find a way to capture them so you can look back to them. And by capturing them and having that conversation, they begin to form patterns for you that will take you to the place that you want to be. And then when you take a step back and say, okay, now I've got to figure out what I want to do over the next 12 months, it's easier to set goals because you're setting goals and priorities towards those big dreams that are way out into the future. And then we take that back a step further and say, we want to crush your goals this year, but we can't crush your goals, in the first month. Let's figure out what are the things that you need to be doing over the next few months. We call them sprints. Some people call them rally cries, where you just say, hey, these are the steps we're going to take over the next few months that tie to those goals, that in turn tie back to the dream. And I think that helps the people that we're working with realize that the little things will make a difference, because they do relate to what the big things are that they hope for.
Inspiration without action is definitely a recipe for failure. You're not going to get there without taking action. And yet the small steps sometimes aren't seen as, well, I haven't advanced myself far enough with this small step. But I love the way that you reverse engineered it from the big goal. What's that called? The BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, to the smaller incremental steps. And my dad used to say, if you're going to eat an elephant, you don't eat him one gulp, you eat him one slice at a time. And so I guess there is some inspiration in making a small incremental step as opposed to looking at the overall goal. Although, if I look at, hold on, let me grab it. If I look at, this silly vision board that, sometimes like, oh, you look at your goals, you put down a little heart with your relationship and fishing, and you put a truck on there and delicious food. If I stare at this thing every day, I start to check off the things that I'm able to accomplish on this, sometimes subconsciously, not even realizing that they're in my sights. But just the idea that I sat down one day and reminded myself every once in a while of these big, hairy, audacious goals, or the big picture goals, sometimes it's enough to get me inspired and into action. Is it work that way? Is that how your brain works?
Yeah, I think it does. And Doug, remind me, you used a phrase about inspiration and big
Yeah,
goals when you.
inspiration without action is a recipe for failure. I mean, that's just how I've kind of led my life.
But I think you could say it the other way too. Action without inspiration
That's
can
true.
be
That's true.
frustrating as hell, right?
Yeah, that's true too. It's just like, yeah,
'Cause if,
without having any inspiration behind it, you kind of don't lock into, well, what's the reason I'm even wanting to do this to begin with? I don't want to make 100 prospecting calls. What I want is I want the end result, which is to be able to go on this wonderful vacation or have some security in my life towards retirement. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. I get more from the inspiration than I do from the action itself, from the results of the action itself.
right, but I think we're both talking about the same thing. They've got to be attached, and I think a perfect example of this is I am working with a client who is making a conscious effort to up-level his business 5 years ahead of schedule. And he said, and we agreed in his planning, that to do that, he's got to build a strong team. But then he started hiring people,
Yeah.
and they started leaving, because he wasn't hiring the right person. So we said, let's stop and think about this. For the next few months, let's not just hire people willy-nilly and hope they
Right.
stick.
Right.
Let's actually be intentional about creating a picture of what your organization will look like in the future, why those roles are important. So you're hiring the right people into the right seats on the bus, to use another person's analogy. And it made all the difference in the world. After about 3 months of just being really intentional about that, he got it back on track, and the avoiding the process of putting that all together, he realized that was silly. I just needed to have the discipline to work on that every day to really get this done right. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs are good starters, but they may not be good finishers.
Yeah, they're definitely good starters, but they're not good implementers in many cases. And I think about the steps that we have gone through, and maybe you can think about this as an entrepreneur yourself, somebody that owns their own business and does your own thing. Oftentimes the lessons that we have learned become the biggest tools in our bag that we can share with our own clients. The things that I struggled with early on as a podcaster and have overcome have been my greatest teaching mechanisms. The strategies that we've created have been, which were my most challenging things, the delegation of responsibility as opposed to micromanaging, staying in our zone of genius. I mean, all of those things I keep thinking about. It's like, if I hadn't made these mistakes myself, then I probably would have more of a challenge teaching others, how to overcome those things. Do you find it's the same thing in your business?
Oh, absolutely. Because you, in many cases, you really can't learn how to do something until you actually do it. It's great to talk about it. It's great to write it out and say, this is how we're going to attempt to do it. But if you're doing it for the first time, that can be very difficult to do. And you're going to make mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from those mistakes, as long as you're willing to be honest with yourself and say, pat yourself on the back. I'm glad I made that step. I'm glad I tried, but I screwed it up. But I'm going to do it again because I know it's important. I'm going to do it better this time, and then it's really going to stick. It's really going to work for you. And I think that's vitally important.
What's the expression? When you're going through hell, keep going. It's like you just want to keep going through it, and until you get on the other side. And so many of the things that I have learned, and it sounds like so many of the things that you have learned have become, your strengths. For those that are in our community, I'm going to give Rob's website in just a little bit, and we're going to obviously give you access to that in the show notes as well, so that you guys can see what he does and how he does it. Now, you primarily work in the financial advisory space in the world of, in the financial world, but so many of the principles, as I've gotten to know you over the last year, and you're a client of mine in the production company, and then obviously I'm doing work with you, and we're looking at your website and going through all of that, and I hear your content that you're creating. So many of the principles that you talk about, not only on your podcast, but in your blog posts, on your website, through our conversations, they really can apply no matter what your career, no matter what your profession. And obviously, all of the personal things that you talk about too apply to the personal world and your faith, and everything as it relates to your personal world as well. Is that by design, or is that just the way that it is?
I think that's a great question. I started to answer that's just the way that it is, but I think it's more by design. Because I like to be very intentional and methodical about the things that I do, and I like it when things fit together. Because even as we were getting ready for this episode, and we were talking about the audiences, your audience are entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. So are mine. Mine just happen to be
right.
Financial advisors. And so I think that's where the crossover is, and why those principles are so similar. And I also love to learn about business from people who aren't in the business that I attach myself to, because I think sometimes you can be kind of taken down the stereotypical role of how someone in the industry thinks you ought to do it, and they don't stop to say, well, there are other industries that are doing similar things, and they have more innovative ways of looking at them, or so why not look at those too? So I'm not just a student and teacher of financial advisors. I am of business, and again, living on purpose, living intentionally, so that you can really get the most out of what you're doing.
The industry, and I'm sure I'm not telling you something you don't already know, but the industry is filled completely. I mean, it's almost kind of like the podcasting space, in that you're overwhelmed every time you turn around. There's a new podcast about the same subject that you've heard about. I've written about principles, about nice guys finishing first, and somebody even wrote a review about my book, and it's like, hey, same stuff. I've seen it a million different times, and I keep thinking, yeah, but until you start to do it, I'm going to keep hitting you over the head. How do with my principles, how do you create a unique value proposition in a world that is so packed with other people that do what you do? I know you're uniquely Rob Brown, but that may not mean something to anyone, or to anyone that is out there that's just shopping for what you do. We know you're unique, but how do you teach them or tell them that you're unique?
Yeah, well, I think number one, I think it's vitally important to understand that each of us are unique, and how we approach what we do is different than anybody else, even if we're talking about similar subjects. Because
Great.
the truth of the matter is, the way I interact with the world, or the way that I interact with a client, is unique to that situation, because nobody can do something with somebody else the way that I do it, even if we're operating with the same set of principles. And my favorite example of that is when I'm working with a client. One of the first things we do is create what we call a signature solution. It's the pattern that they use to help their clients get from where they are when they come to them to where they would like to be out into the future. And it's really easy when you're thinking about creating that signature process, a signature solution, to say, well, you meet with people, you ask them a bunch of questions, you look at their financial statements, you create a plan for them based on that, and then you monitor that plan. I mean, that's like financial advisor mantra, but it's also probably very similar in coaching business owners. But how you approach that, the language that you use, structures that. So as we're creating these signature solutions, which represent that unique value, we want to pull out the way that you actually talk about that in the world. What are the words that you use that are different than the way that somebody else might do it? Because that's part of what that uniqueness is.
Where do you see yourself going with what you do? We all trade to a certain degree time for dollars, and when you run out of time, you've hit your capacity of making money if you're doing it all on your own. Now, I know you also have a partner, and you have probably a team behind you that does what you do. How do you know what to keep for yourself and what to delegate to others? Because I'm sure, knowing our entrepreneurs in our community today, some of them solopreneurs, some of them entrepreneurs with teams, the challenge oftentimes is delegating the responsibilities out. How do you know what is delegatable and what is something you want to keep on your own?
Right. I'm kind of hard-headed, so for me, sometimes I just have to do it long enough to realize that yes, there is somebody else that can do it. But an exercise that I put myself through and I put my clients through is we kind of break things down into quadrants of, what are those things that you do in your business that are, for lack of a better way of saying, your highest dollar per hour activities that you also enjoy doing,
right?
Because that's that zone of genius where you really want to be spending your time. And then at the other corner, the other quadrant, or what are those things that you're doing that you're earning the least amount of money per hour? You're probably not really good at them. In fact, there are other people on your team who are good at them. Let's make sure that they have them. And we just kind of to split that out because because you have to think about it. And then I also think, I'm thinking about my business right now is I've had a full coaching practice for a number of years. And many people would say, well, Rob, that's great. Your business is full. You're hitting great strides. Good things are happening in your business. Well, that's limiting the amount of difference that I can make in the world if I am just saying I'm going to work with the dozen and a half, 24 private clients that I work with. So I'm stretching myself as we speak. One of the reasons that I'm working with your podcast production team is that we want to do more one-to-many sort of work, because that's the other way of getting some of that. I was going to say get time back. You never get time back. A way to just leverage that time so that you're having that impact. You're creating that purpose. You're being really intentional about making a difference to other people.
I'm going to say 3 words, and I want you to say a word in response to each of these 3 words as I say them to you. Just the first thing that comes to your mind. I'm going to take you out of the out of talking to an audience. Just talk to me as a human being, somebody that owns a business, runs a business, has personal and professional goals and relationships and things. So, are you ready? Here come the 3 words. And Nice Guy community, just know, did I prepare you for any of this, Rob?
No, not at all.
Rob's like, oh shit, what's he going to say? Okay, this is going to be easy. You'll know this, and it may take you a second to think about it, but I'm going to say 3 words. Okay, word number 1, delegate. What do you still have to delegate?
That's a big list for me.
That's good. I like that. That's good.
Yeah, it really is, because of this transition that we're making. And so I know you wanted 1 word. I'm going to let you down there, Doug. I can't think of 1 word.
All right, I can help fine tune it a little bit. Is there something on your list of things that you do right now that you want to delegate?
Yes, there are, and that's why I have a hard time. I probably have.
That's okay. Name 1 of them. It doesn't have to be the most important one.
Scheduling time with clients.
Okay, that's good. That's important. Build relationship with current clients. There's 2 ways that you can create more revenue stream. Nice Guy community, and I'm sure that Rob understands this too. You can either go out there and find new clients, or you can do more with the clients that you have right now. And I think that spending more time with your clients would certainly be one avenue to not only teach them more, but to also have opportunities greater with those clients. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. But I was even taking that one level deeper, and that I'm a big believer that we should, as business owners, as entrepreneurs and leaders, not be in charge of our own calendars, because that can limit how much we get done. And so I did that for years, and I
Mhm.
gave it up, and now I'm having a hard time giving it back out to somebody else.
Do you use an automated scheduler, or do you have a VA that does that, or are you talking about something beyond even those two things?
Well, I do not have a VA currently, but I do have a scheduling software.
Right.
But um, it's the just the process of getting clients on the calendar at the right time and not scheduling with them. It seems very basic, but
Okay.
it's a freeing thing
Look, I mean, I don't
when
have
I
a
just show up and my appointments are there, and if I send out that calendar link and somebody didn't respond to it, I'm not the one chasing them
right.
down saying
Understood. I got
find
it
that
now.
time.
Sorry. I was having a hard time just trying to figure out what direction, but now I understand that the whole calendar chase to me, having an automated scheduler for the purpose of automating and not doing the back and forth is great. That's one. But also having the follow-up tool so that you don't even have to follow the automation. You can just say, hey,
Yeah.
the automation says they haven't responded to this. We need to resend this out to that client, or this is still on your to-do list. We've got to make sure this gets taken care of. Okay, that was good. That was
Yeah,
for,
so
yeah, go
let
ahead.
me so
Yeah,
now I want to respond better to your
yeah, that's
delegate.
okay.
My one answer would be VA. That is really
All right, we
how
got
about
to
that?
it. We got to, it only took us 5 minutes, but we got to, but
Yeah.
we got to, and I'll tell you that was probably one of the best additions that we made. And this was years ago. We brought on, I think you know Ashley from our team. We brought on Ashley, and Ashley is really only I think 15 hours a week. I think that's what we have her for, and she is an invaluable resource that we could not deal without at an expense that is such a minor expense as it relates to our overall expenses. It was probably she was probably it. She was probably the best financial investment that we've made in this company in years, in years. So I
Yeah.
encourage you to do that. Okay, that was delegate. I got two more though, two more, and then I got
Oh,
one follow up question. And these probably won't be quite as challenging for you. What's one thing on your list right now that you want to delete that you don't even want in your life that is in your life, whether personally or professionally?
I want to delete posting to social media. Um,
I'm with you on
I
that.
I've gotten myself to a point where I'm just doing that too much. And I have a system down for what I want to post, how I want to post. And it's something that maybe the answer to
I was
this
going to
is
say
VA
C answer number C delegate
yeah,
answer because
yeah,
that's the same
yeah,
thing. Okay, so
yeah.
that's
And
good. Good answer.
I love these questions because this is coaching me, because these are things that I have coached many people on. I'm kind of telling myself in the back of my mind I need to do as I make this change that we're making in the business, but I've hesitated to do it. And I'm thinking of my assistant of 18 years who, um, when I left a prior business, I lost her.
Yeah.
And I know how valuable she was for doing the stuff we're talking about. So
So I'm
this
I'm
is
making most
this is
of
therapeutic.
and you know what the and I appreciate you saying that. Thank you for helping me coach the coach, which is always an honor for me to be able to do that. And I think about the first thing that you had said about, meeting your current clients, and then I remember I have a podcast. And I sent out a link to all of my top tier clients. This is where the category you're in, top tier client. All of my top tier clients got a link, and that link was to be on the show. Of the 25 or 30 that I sent out, almost 20 of them, you being one of them, responded positively. And it gives me an opportunity to ask questions like this, which are reflection questions as an interviewer. And to a degree, there is some coaching. So I love the idea that This is a cathartic experience for me too, because I'm now learning from what you are learning from as well. So thank
Yeah,
you
because
for sharing that
yeah,
with me.
I I think we all love to repeat our mistakes, and I just hear my as I hear if I'm listening to myself talk about this, I'm thinking, Rob, you're you're doing something that you advise against all the time, and there's not a good excuse.
All right. Well. There is a good inspiration right now, and there is the ability for you to take action, because we've discussed that inspiration without action is a recipe for failure, and action without inspiration is also a recipe for failure. You've changed that in my mind as well. All right. I'm going to ask you the last D, and this will be the final one. This will be the easiest one. I really think, because I know this is the one that I hit home with on your in your intro, but it's the one that a lot of times people don't really focus as much on. And the third D is, what's your dream? So what's the one thing that you see as your far off future vision that you want to attain, that it's not that it's eluded you, but it's always that one that's in the distance? What is that dream in the distance for you right now?
Well, my dream is to really share the message of being what I call a truest fan. My business is called Truest Fan Coaching, which was inspired by a book that I wrote called Truest Fan: Live, Love, and Lead with Purpose and Impact. And my dream is to really get that message out there to a bigger and bigger audience. And I have held myself back. And so my dream is to really, really go after that. And that's why I'm doing the podcast and some other things that I'm doing, because it's an important message. The idea of being a truest fan, of being a fan of yourself, a fan of other people's, to live in a way that you treat others the way that you would like to be treated. That's just so fundamentally important to me. And it's not, as we were talking about, it's not like a new thing. It's the golden rule.
Right.
It's just my version of the golden rule.
Well, what I love about it too is I can easily see the vision and the opportunity for you to actually put a stadium full of people together. It's just the vehicle. You're waiting for the vehicle to show up. I mean, you're putting the right stones in the wall. Now it's just a matter of collecting the result. And I know it's coming, and it's just a matter of time before that happens. So. Anything that I should be asking you that I'm not asking about what you do, how you do it, I'm going to make sure that we share truestfan.com in the show notes so everybody has access to that. But is there anything that I should be sharing with my audience that we have not yet touched upon?
Well, as we've talked about in this show so far, or a couple of times, is the importance of taking action. And so one of the things that I always like to do when I have an opportunity is to encourage people to take something that you've learned from the conversation that we have today and decide how to put it to work. And the thing that really comes to me is when we were talking about success habits, and having those actions that build to that inspiration, or vice versa. What is something that you should be doing every day that will advance your cause, whether it's in your business or in your personal life, that you can put to work? And I want to challenge people to that, because I think that is important, because we just like, I kind of discovered in not being able to answer the delegate question effectively or quickly, is we have blind spots, and we can move through those blind spots by working on new things, and don't to be huge things, but one step at a time every day.
For those in our listening community, Nice Guy community, take advantage of Rob's opportunity to get to his website, get in touch with him. If you're in the financial advisory space, that would be great. Would you take on a client that was in the entrepreneur space as a coaching client, or are you adverse to doing that?
Oh, I do work with non-financial advisors, but it's a relatively small number.
All right. So there's the calling card for you. For those in our community, take a moment, go over to Rob's website, truestfan.com. We'll put a link in the show notes. Also, we'll put links in the show notes for Rob's YouTube channel so you can get a good picture of what he's all about, and also his LinkedIn account as well. Rob, I appreciate you sharing your expertise on the Nice Guys today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Doug.
Hey, Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice. Again, special thanks to Rob Brown. All of his information, including access to his website and all of the other assets, will be right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Don't underestimate the power of nice.